In 2014, a research vessel off the coast of Portugal came across something nobody on board had ever seen. A group of sperm whales, completely still at the surface, heads pointing downward into the water. Not feeding, not sleeping, not doing anything that matched any known whale behavior in the literature. The researchers circled them for hours. The whales didn't move. Eventually, the team realized what they were looking at: a dead juvenile whale drifting just below the surface. And the group, maybe 20 of them, arranged in a loose circle. In the middle of the open Atlantic, these giant whales are among the most powerful vocalizers on Earth. They communicate constantly with clicking sounds loud enough to stun prey. Their calls are so powerful, researchers can identify individual whales by their voice alone from kilometers away. That day, the ocean was completely silent. The team watched for hours. Nobody spoke much on deck either. At some point, the whales slowly, quietly dispersed. No signal anyone could detect, no obvious moment of conclusion. They were there, and then they weren't. Scientists call it a vigil behavior. They don't have a better word for it yet. That's the question that keeps biologists up at night. Not whether animals feel pain or fear or joy. We've mostly settled those. The harder question is whether any animal on this planet understands death. That death is a permanent, inevitable, universal event. That it happens to everything. That it's going to happen to them. Because there's a massive difference between reacting to death and understanding it. Let's start with sea otters. A mother sea otter who loses her pup will carry the body with her. For days, sometimes over a week. She grooms it, she keeps it floating on her chest. The way she would a living pup. She refuses to let it sink. Researchers watching this behavior have documented mothers losing significant body weight during these periods. Because they're so focused on carrying the body that they barely eat. At some point, the body deteriorates, enough that it sinks, or she finally lets it go. And then she moves on. What is that? The easy answer is grief. But grief implies an understanding of what's been lost. The harder, more unsettling possibility is that the mother otter isn't grieving. She's just responding to the presence of her pup. Her brain is wired to keep the pup close, to groom it, to protect it. And that wiring doesn't have an off switch for when the pup stops moving. She might not know it's dead. She might just know something is deeply, horribly wrong. And the only thing she can do is hold on. Or she might know exactly what happened and be choosing to hold on anyway. We genuinely cannot tell which one it is. Geese mate for life. When one goose in a pair dies, the surviving goose will sometimes leave the flock entirely. These are social animals. They migrate together, feed together, sleep in groups for safety. Leaving the flock is not a casual decision for a goose. It's dangerous. And yet they do it. They'll wander alone, sometimes for weeks. Returning to places the pair used to frequent. Biologists following these birds have noted changes in their posture, their feeding behavior, their alertness. A grieving goose looks like a depressed one. But here's where it gets philosophically thorny. A goose that wanders back to a familiar pond isn't necessarily looking for its dead partner. It might just be following habit. The behavior pattern says, go here with mate. The mate is gone. The behavior still fires. Is that grief? Is that memory? Is that something in between that doesn't have a name yet? In 2009, a researcher studying wild giraffes in Tanzania documented something nobody had recorded before. A mother giraffe stood over her dead calf for over 3 days. She nudged it repeatedly with her nose. She chased away any animal that came close, including hyenas substantially larger than the calf. She didn't eat, she barely moved. Other giraffes in the area would occasionally approach, lower their necks toward the calf, and stand there briefly before moving on. 3 days. For a prey animal in open savanna, standing still for 3 days is genuinely life-threatening. Predators exist, hunger compounds. Every survival instinct should be screaming at her to leave. She stayed anyway. At some point on the 4th day, she walked away and rejoined the herd. What happened in her mind between day 3 and day 4? What changed? Did something finally register? Some neurological threshold crossed? Some slow dawning realization? Or did she just reach the absolute limit of what her body could sustain? We don't know. And the honest thing to say is, we don't know. We may never know. Here's the part that should probably bother you more than it does. The way we study animal cognition is almost entirely behavioral. We watch what animals do and work backward to figure out what they might be thinking. But behavior is a terrible window into consciousness. Humans behave in ways all the time that don't reflect what's actually happening inside them. We laugh at funerals. We feel nothing at the moment of catastrophe and fall apart 6 months later in a grocery store. We attend the burial of someone we hated and cry anyway. If aliens were studying us the way we study animals, purely through observation without access to language, they'd get a very incomplete picture. So when we watch a crow funeral or a mother otter carrying a body, we're looking through a keyhole at something that might be vast on the other side, or might be a small room. We genuinely cannot tell. What we do know is that some animals respond to death in ways that go beyond simple instinct. Western scrub jays, small, sharp birds related to crows, have been studied specifically for this. When a jay dies near the territory of other jays, those jays will sometimes stop foraging and gather around the body. Researchers who played recordings of these calls found that other jays responded immediately, abandoning food. They weren't protecting a nest, they weren't responding to a predator. They seemed to be responding specifically to the death itself. As if word needed to spread. As if the community needed to know. Whether that represents anything like human mourning is a completely separate question. But it's not nothing. These birds are doing something organized around the fact of death that serves no obvious survival purpose. And that's the category that's hard to explain away. We're just not fluent in the language yet.